Rotterdam, primo porto d'Europa e capitale dell'architettura. Negli anni '80 una nuova e coraggiosa attività politica architettonica modificò radicalmente la città. Il centro vide sorgere nuovi skyline, i palazzi di uffici e i centri ricreativi diedero un nuovo impulso alle attività economiche. Grazie a questa profonda ristrutturazione, oggi Rotterdam è considerata una delle città europee più stimolanti e creative da ogni punto di vista.
Rotterdam is an international city. In the program of our local government for the 4 years ahead, the focus is really on youth. Everything that has to do with talent development is one of the important issues for the city, developing talents of our youngsters. I think it's really important to create enough chances and to support the youngsters, designers, but also painters and other active people in the creative sector, to give them enough opportunity.
When the first plans were presented of the cube houses in Rotterdam, and at that time they planned it to be social housing, and so when I saw these plans, I thought I should have this one because it appealed to me very much.
First, I've lived in Rotterdam, I think maybe 7 or 8 years, maybe a bit longer, and I never really thought about it as a symbol for Rotterdam. But it was not until we really started living here that it really became a symbol even for us.
Why we decided to make a hostel here in the cube houses was because before we were in the cube houses, Staycay Rotterdam was situated somewhere else in Rotterdam. We wanted to grow and we were looking for a new location, and then a real estate agent came and they said, well, probably I have a great location for you. So the chain went to look at this building and they said, well, yes, this would be terrific because Staycay has more hostels in Holland and they're all situated special buildings like castles, old schools, etc. So the cubic houses were perfect in this picture.
Le cube house sono il simbolo architettonico di Rotterdam. Ma perché Rotterdam è una città così legata all'architettura? E perché Rotterdam è riconosciuta internazionalmente come una città dove ormai l'architettura fa parte del suo DNA? La risposta può essere data dalle persone che ancora oggi contribuiscono a fare di Rotterdam una delle più interessanti capitali europee dell'architettura.
I think the architectural climate in Rotterdam has been really good for the past, let's say, 10 years. You have to imagine that Rotterdam 20 years ago there was nothing, but within these 20 years Rotterdam had a tremendous development in architecture.
The city has become a collection of experiments which you can read from post-war and then the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s types of architecture. But on the other hand, it's also this oversized city of space which has attracted a lot of designers and architects to establish a practice.
Rotterdam already started in the beginning of the 20th century with a culture that was about modernity and also about modern architecture, like Van der Broek and Bakema, like Maaskant. People from the pre-war and around the war period were forerunners in modernity in architecture. And this culture became part of the DNA of Rotterdam, you could say, and it developed until now, where you have offices like OMA and MVRDV and Nedelingsriedijk in Rotterdam, which are not maybe in modernist in a strict architectural sense, but are very much aligned to this thought of modernity, to this thought of seeking for possibilities for progress through architecture.
Rotterdam has many architects. It's really one big crowd, one sort of family you cannot hide. That's very nice. That's very good, because also we actually only have an Academy of Architecture in Rotterdam, and the University of Architecture is actually in Delft, which is very close. But so many people go to Rotterdam here to work, and that's mainly because I would say the main and well-known Dutch firms in architecture are actually located here in Rotterdam.
The city of Rotterdam, for me, as architecture, is very inspiring because of the history of Rotterdam, because it's bombed during the Second World War, and after that it is completely rebuilt, and also you still feel that in the mentality of the people that are living here. So they're really hard workers, and also this area where we are now, in an old shipyard, you could really feel that people wanted to make something new of their city.
Nel maggio 1940 Rotterdam venne bombardata dalla Luftwaffe nell'ultimo dei 5 giorni di guerra nei Paesi Bassi. Il cuore della città venne quasi completamente distrutto. Vennero lanciate 97 tonnellate di bombe che causarono la morte di circa 900 persone e circa 80.000 furono i senza tetto. Questo tipo di tecnica di bombardamento a tappeto era usato spesso nella Seconda Guerra Mondiale e consisteva nel colpire in maniera indiscriminata vaste aree urbane di territorio nemico. Una differenza dal bombardamento finalizzato alla distruzione diretta degli obiettivi militari che Rotterdam ha dovuto pagare con una quasi semidistruzione totale.
Well, Rotterdam has a so-called fortune of being bombed after the war or during the war. And therefore we really had literally a tabula rasa. So all the planning, dreams and desires then being in fashion from early modernism to later postmodernism were actually possible to realize here, because there was hardly any context. There were just 2 buildings left.
It's a very cliché to always only look back towards the war as being the clearing ground of Rotterdam that made architecture possible. I think it has much more to do with the spirit. I think the spirit within Rotterdam and the Rotterdam people very much is about a making of mentality. There are a lot of people. The harbour has a tremendous dynamics in making things, in trading, in. It's big scale, it's adventurous, it's also almost like sort of this harbour area, sort of pirate zone where people explore and experiment and do things. And I think that kind of climate, that kind of environment gave the city of Rotterdam a certain spirit. And I think that spirit is about experimenting and daring. We're a city of doing and not of waiting.
I cannot really explain why in Rotterdam it is possible to combine old and new architecture in the way that is done recently. I think it has to do with the Second World War, that we already, the illusion of living in the 16th, 17th, 18th century is already distorted by this bombardment of the city center. So we have to put up with new architecture anyhow, so let's make it the best new architecture thinkable. If we have to build new things, well, let's build nice new things, not cheap, fast and like anything else, but let's make special things.
La storia delle prime case cubo o cubiche situate a Helmond inizia nel 1972, quando all'architetto Piet Blom venne affidata la realizzazione di un progetto che prevedeva la creazione di un complesso abitativo attorno ad un complesso culturale. Ma l'idea di costruire case uguali anche a Rotterdam venne allo stesso Blom quando gli fu affidato il progetto di costruire degli appartamenti in una zona pedonale che si proponeva di collegare il vecchio porto con il centro cittadino. Blom iniziò a costruire nel 1982 e terminò nel 1984. Il progetto prevedeva inizialmente 74 edifici, ma ne vennero realizzati solamente 39.
Cube House originally was called Pole House, but also Tree House. The architect himself, Piet Blom, was asked for a place called Helmond near Eindhoven to make a design there. And in the 70s it was quite common that people of the neighborhood could have their opinion. And some guy said, well, we're living here in a surrounding with a lot of trees, why don't we go back to the tree? It was a kind of poetic, romantic idea, but he got stuck with it, and he was trying out with matchboxes, and finally he came to this so-called tree house.
Dichtheid van mijn project 205 woningen per hectare is. Dus een ongelofelijke dichtheid zoals je alleen op sommige plekken in Marseille of je moet echt ver weg gaan weer dat kunnen vinden.
Piet Blom was definitely one of those guys that saw, adopted in an early stage all these sort of new demands from society to create new living conditions in the city. Because we don't have this historical values in the city, because they were simply not there. The urban fabric from pre-war was gone. So and in replacement we got a very rationalized post-war fabric, which was quite abstract and autonomous. And Piet Blom at least tried to grasp a certain human scale again. And well, you could wonder if he succeeded, but at least you see in his buildings that he tried to reintroduce this human scale in the urban fabric.
Still that summer I cannot bear.
Verschillende werelden, 1,80 meter omhoog naar de Blaak. Als je het vanaf het zonnige kant van de Mariniersweg.
The Q buildings by Piet Blom, which are situated in Rotterdam, are in a certain sense interesting because it's a kind of experiment in a new kind of collectivity. So in that sense, although it didn't work very well at all topics, it is an interesting thing on the one hand because you can study it, you can learn from it, how this new kind of collectivity can take shape in a contemporary time. At the other hand, in a certain sense, it still works. It has been adjusted in a certain way, but it seems to be still working.
We want to tell that we were not necessarily looking for a cube house, and that it was really, I think, a coincidence.
Yeah, it was spontaneous.
Yeah, spontaneous.
We just wanted to have a look, really. So we called the guy who sells the house. And,
the real estate.
Yeah, the real estate. We wanted to make an appointment, and he was a little bit agitated because he had a lot of viewers that didn't really want to buy it, but just wanted to view the house like a free tour. And it was really fun. After I think a week, we really thought about it, and we decided to call him again to make a second appointment. And the second time he was a lot more enthusiastic about our chances for the house.
The architect, Piet Blom, he designed it all on paper. He didn't have a computer at the time, so it was quite a genius in terms of space. He wanted to use natural materials, so he was originally a carpenter. He was very fond of wood, and as you can imagine, he chose for a wooden frame for these cube houses.
Well, the cube houses are a symbol of Rotterdam, and Stay OK has hostels in special places. Well, where better to make a hostel than in a symbol of a city? So the cubic houses of Rotterdam were a perfect match with our hostel chain. In Holland it's easy to build a hostel in a building as long as you keep the outside the same. You can do almost anything in a building. So the architect made drawings and came back to Stay OK and showed the drawings, and then it was practically easily decided from okay, this is what we're going to do.
The basic structure is concrete. So the viaduct on which you're standing is lots of concrete and steel, but the cube itself, the floors and the pillars are made of concrete as well, reinforced of course, but the cube itself has a wooden structure, has a wooden frame. They mounted panels on the outside and inside, so-called SAM panels. And these consist half out of cement, half out of wood fiber. And there is rock wool insulation in between. So these are the materials which are used. And double glass windows everywhere. So it's quite well insulated.
Well, we came here and there was a lot of built-in furniture already here, and we decided we really didn't like it, but we saw the potential to make create our own living space. So first we took everything out, literally everything. Everything was made of wood, the old furniture. We stripped, we stripped down the wallpaper, and so we can start off really fresh. One of the first things we did is made a design for the kitchen. It looks like a normal kitchen, but the framework is built on an angled wall. And yeah, that's the first thing we designed, and the front and the top of the cupboards are just from IKEA.
Yeah, you really have to go with the lines of the house. You cannot just put a couch in it because it's just weird and doesn't feel good, you know, it's not...
It doesn't fit really well.
Yeah.
So yeah, we take advantage of the angled walls that create a lot of space. If the walls were straight up, the room would be really small. But I think the walls they go, I think 2 meters, 2.5 meters to the side. They create a lot of space.
Ognuna di queste case è formata da 3 piani. Al secondo piano si trova solitamente il bagno e la camera da letto e l'altezza di ogni piano in alcuni punti non supera il 1,5 metri. Altri 18 edifici di questo tipo vennero in seguito eretti in Spilwijnsplain negli anni successivi. Le prime 3 case cubiche di prova furono costruite nella Europaweg nel 1975. All'inizio furono vendute ad un prezzo che si è modificato con il trascorrere del tempo.
The first version in Helmond was on television several times, and I also had the feeling that I was attracted to this kind of housing. There was no social housing anymore, and they wanted to sell these houses. So in 1982 I saw an ad in the paper, and they were presented as apartments and they could be bought for reasonable prices. But well, I had to think twice before to do that. But I finally did, and I bought this house. And I went to Helmond to see the original version, and I had some problems to get in because they had loads of people who wanted to get inside. So, and with this thought I got back to Rotterdam, and I thought to myself, well, where the hell is Helmond if there are Americans and Asian people willing to get in and shoot pictures? Well, then we will have loads of these kind of people in Rotterdam once it's ready. People of Rotterdam was also curious how it would work inside, so I slowly developed an idea to open up for a couple of months to give people a chance to have a look inside. In the period of construction, I was here about 2 times a week to make pictures of the progress of the construction period. And at one night I heard voices, and I went down in one of these cubes. They were half finished. And then I met Piet Blom, the architect. I told him about my plans to open up for a while, and he was in favor of that idea. And he actually opened the museum house.
Before Stay OK came into this building, a high school was in this building, so the building was already there as one building. If you stand back and take a look at the cubic houses, you will see to the right 2 supercubes. And one supercube is as big as 1 cubic house. And around the 2 supercubes there are 5 normal cubes. And all these buildings, the 2 supercubes and the 5 normal cubes, they are the hostel, and they were already joined together. So we didn't have to do anything about joining them together, breaking walls. We just had to renovate it and make rooms in it. Stay OK is a hostel, not a hotel. We have 49 rooms with in total 243 beds. So we provide not rooms, but we provide a bed. We have 6-person bedrooms, we have 5-person bedrooms, but also a couple of 3- and 2-person bedrooms. If you come and stay at Stay OK, you will pay for a bed and breakfast, and that varies from 22 euros up till 37 euros. And that's depending on how busy it is in Rotterdam. So how much more beds we have occupied, the higher the rate will be. Or if we think, okay, this period will be very busy, we will start higher, and then it will fluctuate.
Rotterdam è una città molto interessante perché è stata quasi completamente distrutta dopo la Seconda Guerra Mondiale, per cui di fatto a partire dagli anni 50 è stata ripianificata da zero, e quello che è anche interessante è che è ancora in movimento, è ancora in costruzione. La maggior parte degli edifici più significativi e interessanti sono stati costruiti tra gli anni 80 e 90, quindi è anche interessante vedere quali sono i risultati.
Immaginate come l'insieme di alberi in un bosco a forma di cubo rovesciato, sorrette da pali, inclinate. Le case cubo sono disposte in fila e ogni edificio è attaccato l'uno all'altro in una perfetta simbiosi di forme, con un colore dominante diventato icona del quartiere Black che le ospita.
They wanted to have a passenger bridge crossing a traffic road called Black, and bringing the people who were going to live around the old harbor, which is an area which was empty for about 40 years because of the bombardments in 1940. And they wanted to bring these people safely to the inner city by means of a passenger bridge. They didn't want to have a bare bridge, so they asked this architect, Piet Blom, who was quite fashionable at the time, to furnish this bridge. And well, he thought by himself, when they have to climb these stairs, it should be kind of a architectonic fancy fair. So, and at the same time, he wanted to have his forest with more of these tree houses. So that's why he chose for these tree houses. And he presented this to the city council, but they said, this is not Rotterdam, you know. Rotterdam is a working class, very rational kind of city, and this doesn't suit in a city like this. So he forgot about it. He had also another assignment alongside this complex near the Old Harbor, social housing complex. So he concentrated on the social housing complex called Spaanse Kade, Spanish Quay project. He had to present this to the municipal council, and he was that smart to make a model of the Old Harbor with a model of his social housing complex at the Spanish Quay, but he also made a model of these cube houses on the north side, and also the White House, which is an office building which was 100 years old, one of the few reminiscences of the pre-war time. And as a whole, he presented this as a whole, and then the city council said, well, it looks very nice, so let's do it. Let's do these cube houses. So he was very smart in presenting his projects. And finally, he succeeded in getting the permission to design this project of these cube houses.
I think it's a partial success. I think he really brings the people who live here together in some way. It's still, I think we know everybody who owns a cube house. There are some new faces and some people who keep to themselves a little bit more, but we generally know everybody here. So I think that is, yeah, it's a success in creating a community.
Well, you fall in love with a kind of house like this, and you adjust to it. It's like a marriage in that respect. And when there is a change in your personal life, you probably have to leave. That is what's happening. So 3 or 4 per year are resold, but sold by mostly youngsters, and then the circle renews. So it renews from time to time, and that is good. It's a house. It's not an old people's home, probably because. Of all the stairs, it's very difficult for old people to take the stairs all the time. People were quite enthusiastic, and they did a lot about the houses themselves, and which was also the idea of the architect.
It's not a regular house, of course, and you have to be a little bit creative with furniture. You cannot put just a bookcase or just a couch in it. You really have to think it over and over, and then we like to design things ourselves, and then for example, a carpenter made our couch and our kitchen, and we designed it. So well, we like it to be creative with it.
Inside of the house has to be a combination of the original design, as you can see in the film, and something we can put in ourselves, like wooden couches or cupboards or a kitchen or something like that. Yeah.
Arredarle però non è semplice. Infatti bisogna prima adattarsi all'architettura progettuale con cui sono state costruite e poi fare le scelte in base alle proprie esigenze. Arredare una casa cubo può essere molto stimolante, ma in certi casi può rappresentare una sfida.
Well, if you come in, you come in a hall, and the first floor is the living floor. So we created this couch, and also television, and the dining table, and the kitchen, and toilet. And if you go upstairs to the second floor, we have 2 bedrooms and a bathroom, but it's officially not a bedroom anymore, because it's one office room and one for all my clothes. And the bedroom is upstairs on the 3rd floor.
People could buy a house like this for reasonable prices. It's about 200,000 euros. There was also a possibility for the buyers to get a subsidy from the government, because at the time young people were stimulated to buy houses. Depending on the income, you could get a subsidy. So the higher the income, the less subsidy, as you can imagine. And after some time it stopped, of course. But this was for young people the necessary argument to say yes. Of course, when you feel attracted to this kind of house, but you couldn't afford it, then it stops. But when you're helped out by the government with a subsidy, the step is more easy.
Yeah, well, it's not particularly really expensive, because there's also a small amount of people who really like to live in a cube house. So there's just a select amount of people. Yeah. And well, I think in comparison with other houses of this size, because it's 100 square meters, and that's, well, it's really big for in the middle of the city. So I think if you compare it with other houses of that size, it's almost cheaper.
People were quite enthusiastic, and they did a lot about the houses themselves, and which was also the idea of the architect. He wanted to have the people who live in these places to have their own ideas about how to live in one. So that's what people did. They had their ideas, and they made a lot of things themselves, or adjusted what they had. And it's a house where you not have a quiet moment, because you have to work to make it work.
Rotterdam è sempre in movimento, come altre famose città del nord Europa. Il continuo mutare, rimodernarsi e l'attento occhio al futuro hanno sviluppato nella città un certo tipo di creatività.
The city is very dynamic. It's a very creative city, and always on the move, and on the move to something newer, better, bigger, higher. Well, the mentality of most people in Rotterdam is also grow and move forward and work hard. You can also see that in the buildings, because we have the, I think, the greatest skyline from Holland. Holland. And well, that's a little bit where Rotterdam is famous for.
If you choose for a house like this, you take some things for granted. You have to climb the stairs, you have to stretch to make it clean, you have to customize things, you have to adjust yourself and your furniture, so to speak. But because you love the space as it is, you do that kind of thing. You know, you adjust yourself. It's for most people, it's a house and a hobby at the same time. That's the way you have to see it. It's personal choice. You really choose for one. The roofing was not as good as it could have been, but They chose for a cheap solution. They chose for shingles. So 13 years back, we, the owners all together are united in an association of owners, and we collectively chose for a new roofing over the old one. And of course, we asked the architect, the original architect, for permission. And he gave permission to do this. 1998, we have a new roofing with zinc and white polyester. So it looks more modern, but it has a better protection from weather conditions.
Cubic house is of course a great experiment in itself and a symbol of how open-minded people have been of even creating unacceptable living conditions because the form dedicates this, or dictates this. And you can wonder what the real urban quality of those blocks are, because it's really hard to rent them out. For people to live there, to hang a painting on the wall, it's quite hard already. So I would say this is also very much an exception, and therefore it's being cherished as a great exception in the city, and it has become a small icon, you could say, for this part of town. But it's really an exception.
The modernity of Rotterdam is closely connected to the fact that Rotterdam is a port city. You can see all around the world that port cities are in a certain way modern, because they always had a certain influx of influences from outside. That's the same what happened in Rotterdam, especially in the 20th century when the harbor, the port area, was really booming and growing. This sense of modernity, this sense of wanting to be modern, got a grip on Rotterdam, and it came into all the pores of Rotterdam, and also in architecture, because it was in the same time that modernism in architecture, or modernity in architecture, was coming up, flowering. So this Rotterdam was a kind of natural place for modern architects to be.